At the end of last Thursday's program, we did a story about Jews being forced to register, identify themselves and their property, and pay a registration fee in Ukraine. We said this is sourced from USA Today and so many other news outlets, and we don't yet know all of the details. Now, after that story ran, in the hours and days that followed, conflicting information started to surface. Some of that information said, well, the documents the flyers calling for Jewish registration were real in the sense that they existed, but they weren't real in the sense that they were put out there by anybody with any kind of authority, right? It's just a tactic to scare people or to make the undersigned look bad. Others said that, well, the flyers themselves were reported as being widely distributed, but there were just these couple of copies that were photographed and placed online. In any case, right now, there are still conflicting stories about that, Lewis, which is the flyers were distributed. It doesn't appear that they have any official authority, but at the same time, the idea that there isn't anti-Jewish sentiment there is also false. So I want to step back from that a little bit because the information is still coming in. Both confirmations and denials of that story are still, as recently as 45 minutes ago, being published by what we would consider primary news sources. What I want to talk about is the virulent anti-Jewish response to us doing that story, Lewis. I wasn't surprised by it. I doubt you were surprised by it. I'll give you a chance to comment after I lay it out. The accusations poured in after we did this story about how I only covered that story because I'm Jewish. We're part of the so-called Zionist media. We want to trick people into thinking that Jews are being targeted. Let's explore this piece by piece because it just blows my mind what has happened with segments of our audience over the last few days. I know most people who are going to hear me explain this don't believe these things, but you should still be interested in it because the dynamics of it are just incredible. When we do a report, right, we don't do original reporting on this program, Lewis. We aren't the Associated Press, for example, or CBS News. This is an opinion show. We've never hidden that. This is clearly an opinion program, and we give our opinions based on news reports. Now, sometimes it's happened that a satirical news story was presented as real news, right? And in those cases, we correct it. And basically people say, oh, we were either too stupid to realize that it was fake news or for some other reason we reported it. The other thing that sometimes will happen is that we report a real story based on the facts that are known at the time. And then later on, some of the facts are changed. The story might have been completely false, or some of the details of that story might have been false. In either case, again, people say, oh, we understand what happened, David. Everybody thought what you thought at the time. Or, David, you're an idiot. How could you not realize that all of those news reports were, while not satirical, they were clearly false? Do you agree, Lewis, that's generally the range of responses to when we cover either satirical news as real news or just cover a story that later turns out to be slightly different?
Right. We don't usually get assaulted, if you will, or accosted or scolded. Yeah, it's usually just, hey, that's actually a fake story, or hey, that's not really what happened. Take a look at this article. That's pretty much the end of it.
And examples could be, oh, the details of a crime story were slightly different, or you forgot this eyewitness account, or, you know, that bill, you said it hasn't yet passed, but it actually just was voted in. So the details like that. Never is my being Jewish the lens through which the story is analyzed by our audience. However, one time we report this story that is, again, it's not a fake story. It is not a false story. It's a story over which the details are less clear than was initially reported. The emails are, I'm a Talmudic Zionist Jew, and our Jewish media handlers have forced me to cover the story. Give it a rest. If you think that emailing me about this is going to go anywhere, it's going to make me come out and apologize because my Jewish handlers, which of course don't exist, Lewis, have forced me into covering this story. This is just absolutely ridiculous. If you seriously send me an email saying we reported on that story because I'm a Talmudic Jew or a Zionist Jew, or Jews control our program from some kind of upper echelon of Jewish control, I'm not going to be able to take anything you say seriously. I'm sorry, Louis.
That's that's perfectly reasonable, I think. First, I would say that please provide proof that we have handlers who are running the program somehow. Please prove that. I challenge anyone who thinks that to prove that.
The anti-Jewish sentiment that is just virulent on the internet and in so many areas of media is just, it knows no bounds. And it's funny because other stories we're wrong about have nothing to do with our being Jewish. But specifically when we're wrong or don't have all the details, or maybe don't have all the details about a story related to Jews anywhere, it's somehow connected to Israel and me being a so-called Zionist.
Right, right. And this is, of course, one of the topics that is part of the big three that we always get a lot of emails and responses to like this. And I don't think that's ever going to change.
No, it's not.